In the ICU, intensive care unit of Houston Memorial Hospital is the neon lights that bounced off the K9 officer, Jack's pallid face. Zeus, Morgan's devoted German shepherd. He pressed the observation to his nose. Window eyes are awake and focused on something. Was incorrect. Zeus monitored the whereabouts of. The doctor growled softly inside the room, rumbling in the back of his throat, attracting Officer Alex's attention. Diaz Zeus had never behaved in such a manner near any of the other medical personnel. However, when the individual pretending to be a doctor started modifying Zeus's medicine and Jack's, the response turned into Zeus, stronger, recalled the mayhem at the harsh chemicals and gunshots at the airport, aroma in the air, and Jack's appearance collapsed following the same shot. The man inside was now clinging to the aroma, the space, causing all of the instincts to once more defend his mate. The dog didn't comprehend the situation completely. However, his instincts were very clear. This dude was equally deadly. Smell that the suspects had encountered in Zeus's airport. Jack needs to keep in mind one thing. Protection 12 hours earlier at all costs. The airport at Houston International was as thousands of travelers make it as bustling as ever, navigating the packed terminals. Zeus and Officer Jack Morgan were on their regular patrol, close to the security. Brilliant lights at checkpoints from the PO reflected the electronic indicators. Floors, but Zeus didn't waver in his. His ears perked up a little as he looked. The German shepherd's constant location, never letting his guard down while on high alert. While on duty, Zeus abruptly appeared. A sudden halt, his ears pricked, and his amber eyes were glued to the international terminal's direction. He sniffed the air slowly, detecting something strange, and then he looked up at Jack and asked, "What's Zeus you?" He Jack's question in a low voice, his hand sliding automatically to Zeus as the radio fastened to his vest. Didn't make his customary gesture, but Jack kept sniffing the air. Whatever instincts Zeus possessed kicked in. Realized it was bad without. Jack reluctantly followed Zeus's example. They passed through the terminal's entrance, moving in the direction of checkpoint 3. Each step the odd chemical smell intensified. Jack noticed the location as they got closer. A bunch of men pushing big chunks of bags via the security check. Lane's Zeus growled softly and looked fixed on the group, and Jack saw that shift in the body language of his partner. "Please pardon me right away, fellas. I need to check your bags," Jack replied firmly, maintaining his voice calm. The gathering momentarily froze, looking at each other anxiously. Then without, one of the men raced a halt, warning. Jack, the policeman, yelled and pulled out his gun. Chaos broke out in the terminal when an accomplice of the fugitive man produced a pistol, and shouts that were fired reverberated through the terminal as travelers rushed to. Zeus's cover flew away in a flash. In the meantime, pursuing the man who had fled, Jack carefully hid behind a pillar, staying clear of a bullet that touched his. The pain rushed through his arm and shoulder. However, he continued to move, shooting back at the shooter while requesting assistance via the radio on the terminal's opposite side. Zeus had already gotten closer. Between the escaping suspect and himself, the dog leaped with such force that it knocked the man to the ground with his jaws clamped around the suspect's arm prior to his being able to. Jack reached for a weapon in spite of his injury. The man was handcuffed just as additional airport security personnel. Jack arrived, panting heavily, sensed the searing agony growing in his. He looked over his shoulder to see Zeus standing, guarding his side, his eyes filled. "Zeus, we got them. Therefore it's done," Jack muttered before he passed out from blood loss. Zeus remained alongside Jack as paramedics filled the ambulance with him, but in the back of the dog's mind, the smell persisted as a silent caution that the ICU was far from done. Tension at Houston Memorial Hospital was. Jack Morgan lay unconscious on a rising, the hospital bed with a network surrounding it, of machines beeping at regular intervals. Zeus sat by the window of observation, his eyes fixed on a physician walking into the space to examine Jack's prescription drugs. The dog's muscles stiffened, and he growled low in his throat, rumbling that Zeus's chemical odor was the same. Had noticed at the airport his. My gut told me that danger was approaching, and he was aware that he needed to defend. Jack's close relationship with Officer Alex Diaz, a friend and companion, observed the odd behavior and made an easy approach to the dog. Alex murmured to Zeus, "It's just a doctor," attempting to soothe him, but Zeus stayed standing with their ears up and vigilant, body coiled like a spring, and was rigid at Dr. Rebecca Lee, the intensive care unit. When the on-call doctor arrived, she had previously worked with therapeutic dogs and realized right once that this wasn't common anxiousness or, "I'm afraid he's just responding this way to." Rebecca, the specific physician, inquired. "Yes, Alex, it only began today," said he was going to continue when Jack's cardiac monitor's blaring alarm interrupted him. They both focused their attention on the window in the doctor's room, was making last-minute adjustments to Jack for a line. Zeus's vital signs started to decline. Leash instantly sprung forward. Alex was struggling under the pressure of having to brace himself, finding it difficult to maintain the Zeus, the strong dog back, gave a harsh bark, the noise that reverberated through the sterile. Like a warning siren, the hospital corridor. "Are you certain?" Rebecca's gaze narrowed. She inquired in a tone, "This guy is a doctor." Alex paused for a moment in worry. "When he was last assigned to Jack, I haven't since the night they brought him in. Seen him previously, and he acknowledged that." Rebecca mumbled, "I've worked in. After more than 3 years in this ICU, I've never observed him before they could speak." Zeus released another deep, menacing snarl as the man within the chamber looked in the direction of the observation window for a moment, the physician's. Zeus's eyes met Rebecca's, and she caught something icy in those eyes. Flash of terror, swiftly followed by the man suddenly turned and strode with anger toward the in-service elevator of the corridor. Rebecca yelled, "Stop him!" However, Zeus was already in front of the command. Years of practice and innumerable hours of chase exercises began as the dog's claws broke free from his leash, clattered on the gleaming floor as he ran down the corridor, shutting the distance at lightning speed. The chase had. Zeus started to charge the hospital corridor, scratching his claws across the polished floor, and every step makes a sound reverberated around the corridors as the German shepherd exerted himself to the limit. The man pretending to be a doctor is speeding ahead, ran in the direction of the service elevator, feverishly pressing the close button. Alex and Rebecca followed the doors as quickly as they could, but they were unable to stay up to date with. Alex yelled, "Get him, Zeus." However, the dog didn't require any more, causing Zeus to comprehend his objective. Flawlessly, the elevator doors started to slide closed as Zeus raced ahead. He leaped with one last surge of speed, narrowly through the closing gap, getting in before the door is sealed. Entirely within the elevator, in a frenzy, the imposter made a little dagger from the pocket of his coat, but Zeus didn't pause with intense rage. He snarled and threw himself at the man, his jaws digging into the suspect's arm. The man screamed, his blood icy, as he fought to break free, but Zeus's hold was relentless, and blood started to flow, to drip from the wound. "Please remove it from me," a man shouted while flailing in despair, but Zeus firmly grasped the man's ability to keep the suspect off balance. Stumbling, he fell to the ground and the elevator doors opened at that precise moment, exposing Alex and 2 hospitals once more, security personnel running in their direction. Zeus obeyed Alex's instruction to liberate Alex, releasing the suspect right away, although keeping a defensive posture and snarling in his throat. The security personnel swiftly pinned the man to the, securing his hands behind his back and cuffing his. Rebecca went back inside the elevator, looking intently at a hospital ID emblem that had escaped the man's. "Transport employees from Pocket James Weston." She read aloud to her. "In another hospital. A suspicious-sounding voice takes him into custody, and we must have a conversation." Display on Jack's blood at the moment. Rebecca, with a forceful command, Zeus stood behind Alex. His focused gaze never strayed from the. I believe the dog instantly understood that this wasn't finished. It was just the The star is something far more hazardous when the suspect is being held and removed. Zeus, Alex, and Rebecca went back to Rebecca's ICU room with Jack. Swiftly looked over the medical equipment. Her eyes narrowed as she became aware of inconsistencies in Jack's prescription drugs. The dosages in the records are incorrect. Someone whispered while scanning the data. Purposefully changed his prescription to damage him. Zeus advanced on a tiny refrigerator in the room's corner. When a specific temperature is sensitive, the dog sat down while the drugs were being stored before the unit, indicating a Rebecca and Alex, the target, traded. Looks, Alex, there's something inside, murmured softly, slowly opening the lower section. They discovered a tiny, glued to the compressor when the package. When Rebecca took it off, she found many unlabeled bottles, each with a "This is not a typical symbol." Medicine, she stated, looking at the vials. Alex's face grew serious as I remembered seeing the symbol prior to one of the investigators at the. He remembered that they followed Jack to the airport. Rebecca came to the conclusion that this isn't only. They are smuggling drugs and transporting something far more hazardous. Alex contacted the investigation right away. Team, as Rebecca contacted the laboratory too, having the material examined as they awaiting memory of the incident at the airport. Alex vividly relived in his memory the combat, the chemical smell that Zeus possessed, found that everything indicated a significant, bigger conspiracy. They're utilizing commercial. Alex mentioned flights to smuggle this item. Rebecca nodded out loud, her expression solemn. This could be a bioweapon of some sort. Must notify the federal authorities. Zeus immediately stood watchful next to Alex. His sharp eyes sweeping the space. After years of working with Jack had given me the opportunity to the dog to identify the symptoms of. He was aware that this combat was in immediate danger. Zeus, what's on your mind is far from over. Alex inquired, half habitually, and the dog aloud snarled softly, his eyes tight as he monitored his environment, which we have. Rebecca said strongly to proceed quickly. If they had the courage to sneak in, they won't stop here at night. The hospital had dropped over the Houston Memorial. Zeus stayed on high alert in the hospital. As darkness fell, the lights in the hallway grew dimmer. Jack was replaced by shift workers. On the hospital bed, asleep, his breathing more steadily now that the medicine had been adjusted without. ICU lights flickered as a warning, and AL's faint murmur reverberated through the. Zeus was cut off by the main power. Sprung to his feet, his ears perked up. Alex's eyes were locked on the door, and he responded just, his hand resting on the grip as rapidly as of his gun. What the devil is happening? Alex demanded, turning to face Rebecca. The backup system ought to have activated by. At that point, Rebecca said nervously, as soon as the electromagnetic locks. The ICU section opened with all of the disengaged security doors, and the computers at the nurse's station went dark, turning off the security cameras. Zeus snarled as darkness engulfed the ward. As Jack's chamber door slowly opens, a recognizable voice resonated as it creaked open. Through the low light, isn't it? This cozy police station, owned by Rick Harrison. Jack, the chief, entered the room with his badge. With a slight sparkle, his face was. Harrison was colder than Alex had ever seen him. Alex, what on earth are you doing here? Required him to tighten his hold on his weapon. Your inquiry is incorrect. Har answered in a menacing tone. I ought to inquire as to why you have stuck your nose where two men shouldn't be in. Behind Harrison, tactical equipment emerged. Zeus advanced to secure the corridor. His roar became deeper, but he held. How long have you been on his ground? Rebecca, who works with them, inquired icily. Her penetrating look went straight through Harrison. Harrison gave a sour laugh at how long. Considering you didn't even know what was actually happening, don't fool yourselves. This surpasses everything you've so far uncovered. You're transporting. Using bioweapons at the airport isn't. Rebecca pressed you, which is why you required management of healthcare facilities. Harrison drew rather than denied it. His firearm and stated that we don't need to make. It's challenging, however, if you stand an hour. Zeus, the way he never completed the sentence. He lunged at Harrison's gun arm, snarling. Rebecca drew the curtain shut fiercely, bringing the room completely dark. The ICCU was shattered by a gunshot. Chaos broke out at the pitch-black window. Zeus, using his intuition and advanced training, maneuvered, attacking strategically from a distance. Alex struggled with one of the angles. Harrison's soldiers as Rebecca set off. The ceiling of the emergency lockdown system. Zeus, the entire intensive care unit, moved like a shadow, striking quickly and efficiently. He clamped down on Harrison as he cornered him, pushing him to lower his back and drop his arm. Alex said, "Up, weapon, freeze," pointing his gun at the other attacker's Harrison, and his troops were ultimately defeated as backup officers and federal agents. Zeus stormed in and stood next to Jax, eyes fixed on the vanquished Harrison. The ambush had been led away. Rebecca was aware that this was far from being the case. From above, whoever was responsible for this, the attack would surely attempt again. Harrison was escorted away with his men of the medical facility under strict federal guard, even if the assault had been neutralized, as both Alex and Rebecca were aware. This was just the beginning of a much more intricate and hazardous conspiracy. Alex was standing close to the ICU entrance. His face was etched with stress as he answered, "I won't give up that easily," looking at Jack, who was still there, unconscious in the medical facility bed. "We have sufficient proof to pursue charges," Rebecca answered as she flipped through the records and files that the team conducting the probe had only. "Safe, but the battle is far from done." Zeus sat next to Jack, twitching his ears. At any slight noise in the vicinity, the devoted dog recognized that the threat had failed the FBI and other tests. Now, federal authorities are involved. Alex noted that this has given us important leads. Rebecca nodded in agreement, but they have further accompli other airports. Channels for smuggling will need to be more. Zeus raised his head, more alert than ever, when Alex's voice was heard, as if he saw the seriousness of their. Rebecca knelt down next to the dog, caressing his ears gently. "He's finished." She exceeded everyone's expectations, remarked gently as they met Alex's glance. "He not only kept Jack safe, but also enabled us to avert a catastrophe outside." The federal agents and hospital patrol cars started to depart, using the arrested criminals beside them, but in unwavering awareness of impending peril remained in the air. "Alex, they'll return," whispered, "but we'll be prepared the next time." Zeus rests next to Jack's bed. His eyes were still open, but his breathing was calm. Tonight, keeping an eye on the door had brought a transient component, but the dog was aware of. Were there other difficulties in the coming hours? Security at Houston Memorial's intensive care unit later was completely recovered. FBI officers and federal agents gathered information, and Harrison investigators were questioned, verified that this incident was only a component of a broader criminal. Zeus from Network stuck by Jack's side as Dr. Rebecca examined him and found that he's restoring stability. If it weren't for everyone's prompt action, we could have lost him. "Thank you, Zeus." "Alex," she said. Alex whispered and patted the dog's head. Zeus gave a small tail-wagging motion, but maintained his watchful gaze, sweeping the space. Agents outside Jack's room reported details regarding more accomplices connected to. One agent intervened on Harrison's behalf and stated that we found leads at many large airports are part of this network. Been conducting business nationally. We've just scratched the surface, Alex remarked. Rebecca grimly nodded. Those responsible won't give up. However, we now have sufficient proof to compel. Jack released them from the shadows with a. He started to stir his eyes with a slight moan, opened slowly and focused on Zeus by his bedside. "Are we friends?" Completed. But he said, "Helly, not even. Get near, Alex. But you can rest now," Zeus said. Zeus took care of the most difficult portion by lifting his head as his name is mentioned, looking devotedly and protectively at Jack. Although the fight was not yet ended, they had managed to a significant triumph together. They would confront whatever happened in the following 2 weeks. Jack Morgan was completely well and participated at a federal hearing with the FBI. Agents provided proof of the smuggling network for bioweapons that spans Jack described how he traveled across several continents. Zeus saw the threat at the airport, stopping a possible disaster in the meanwhile, a new national K9. Rebecca started a security program. Lee was in charge of the initiative training, specific K9 units to be deployed in major airports and medical facilities. Jack and Zoo acted as advisors in the development of advanced safety precautions. That night, Jack and Zeus unwinded on a rooftop of the hospital. Jack patted Zeus's head with a smile. Occasionally, the most heroic figures are the people who never give up on their beliefs. They perceived that he spoke quietly in the distance between Houston's city lights. Glistened as a plane lifted off the. Jack stood at the international airport and gazed down at his faithful companion. Come on, Zeus. It's partner time to return to work. He stood up, prepared for the next mission.